Welcome to Train Signal. You're watching Video 6, Outlook Web Access in Exchange 2003. In this video, we're going to take a look at the powerful tool Outlook Web Access and how you can use it in your organization. In this video, we're going to first just go over Outlook Web Access and give you a feel for how it works and what it's all about. From there, we're going to show you how to set it up, and we're going to start by configuring it locally. And you've got to preview this already if you've watched some of the previous videos, because we've used Outlook Web Access in a couple examples. After we finish that, we're going to show you how to connect to Outlook Web Access over the internet, and that's going to entail changing some NAT settings as well as some DNS settings. Now, the DNS settings we go and take a look at, those are going to be done out at a third-party registrar, GoDaddy once again. We're just going to modify our default domain name and show you how you can modify those to incorporate Outlook Web Access into the mix. Once we finish getting Outlook Web Access set up, running, and you're comfortable with the tool, then we're going to add one more layer onto it, and we're actually going to secure this Outlook Web Access by getting a SSL certificate, Secure Sockets Layer, from GoDaddy and install this certificate right on our web server on Exchange One. We'll finish this up with a quick look on a Linksys router just to give you a feel for exactly how you would configure this if you have a Linksys router or a similar device in place instead of a Server 2003 NAT server. Alright, let's get started. We're first going to take a look at a diagram of the Sophie's Toy Box Company network just to give you a better feel for how Outlook Web Access is used within the company. Now, if we want to, we can use it internally on a company network. So we could actually access the Outlook Web Access server by going from a laptop or a desktop computer over to the Exchange server. Now, Outlook Web Access is made possible because before we installed Exchange server, we were required to install Internet Information Services on that Windows Server 2003 box. Okay, so after we install Exchange, by default, Outlook Web Access is available, and we'll take a look at exactly how you can access that through your browser. Okay, so it is available on the local area network. Now, that's not the most common place you're going to be using it, but ideally, if you didn't want to deploy Outlook, the full-blown client version, and purchase the licenses, you could actually use Outlook Web Access on the desktop here and save money by not purchasing an Outlook 2003 license. Typically what you're going to find is Outlook Web Access is used when traveling users are using a laptop or some sort of desktop machine, and then what they're able to do is connect over the internet through your NAT server, where it's then redirected inbound into the Exchange server. Okay, so you can securely connect over the internet through a firewall and then access all of your email, public folders, and now in Outlook 2003 Web Access, even your saved emails, your saved documents that you may create, all over the internet. Okay, and now this is powerful. When we look at this next diagram here, we actually have cross-compatibility with different browsers. You can use Internet Explorer 5.01 or higher is going to give you the best best feature set. You can also use Netscape Navigator, okay, and it's recommended that you use 6 or higher to get, once again, the best feature set, although Netscape Navigator actually has a version 7 now. Or if you're a Firefox fan, new open source browser offered by Mozilla, you're wanting to use 1.0 or higher. Okay, all of these browsers will work with Outlook Web Access, and they're pretty similar in how they work. Now, here's the syntax. If you actually want to connect out to a server on a local network, you're going to see here in a second, we're going to use this particular syntax. Okay, and this is just http:// the name of your server. Remember, our server name is Exchange One. So whatever your server name is there, followed by / exchange. Okay, now this exchange here, the reason you have to supply this is actually the virtual directory that's set up on the Internet Information Services 6.0 web server. So all of the Outlook Web Access components are actually stored within this exchange virtual directory. Okay, so you'll always be supplying this / exchange after the URL, no matter which way we're going to be supplying it. Okay, here's another example. You can use an IP address, as you see right here. So we've just supplied Exchange One's IP address, or you can use the fully qualified domain name or DNS name, exchange1.sophiestoybox.local. Now, these are all assuming a local access to this Outlook Web Access box. All right, if we're on the internet, which we typically will be, we're going to be using a live internet domain name, and that's how we're going to set it up and configure it here in just a second. All right, let's test this out and get a feel for how this works. So we're going to exit out of here, and we're just sitting on the XP base system. And this isn't drawn up as part of the network, but it is on the same physical network, and it is joined to the Sophie's Toybox.local domain. So just picture it as another XP machine on the network. And if we open up Internet Explorer here, we can just type in http:// the name of the server. Okay, so it's exchange1 / and then that Exchange virtual directory that we were referring to a second ago. When I hit enter here, it's going to log me on, and because I'm already logged on with this user account, Scott A. Skinger, it automatically takes me into this particular Outlook Web Access user. So here I've got all sorts of features. We'll come back and take a closer look at these, but as you can see here, I've got access to my inbox, calendar. Okay, down here I can open up rules. Okay, this wasn't available before, but we can actually use Outlook rules now. So, and you pretty much have the same look and feel as you had with, with your full Outlook 2003 client. Okay, so here are your folders. You also can create new email, all sorts of stuff. And like I said, we'll come back to this here in a second. Another way of accessing this is by using an IP address. So just to show you here, we can substitute 192.168.200.100 here. Okay, and in this case, it's actually going to have us log on. So just to show you what we can do, I'm going to use a different username and password. Let's use Ray Moray's account. Okay, so it's now going to take us out of this Outlook Web Access box, and it's going to take us into Ray Moray's. Okay, and this actually looks like we are still in... Oh no, this is Ray Moray's box now, okay. It says right up here. I thought for a second that we were in the Scott A. Skinger box. We just have the same types of emails here. Okay, so you can see right here, Ray Moray's box is opened up. It shows 2 unopened emails. These are from earlier today. Okay, so you've got basically the same look and feel that you have anytime you're looking at the normal full Outlook client as well. All right, some other ways you can do it. Let's say that we're sitting here on this machine and we want to connect directly into somebody else's mailbox. Another way you can do this is by putting the username at the end here. So you see we've got the server name, Exchange, the virtual directory, and now I'm supplying the actual username. When I hit enter now, it's going to attempt to take me into Bob Bass's mailbox. Okay, but I'm going to have to log on first. And you can see right here, it's asking for my credentials. So I'm going to supply these and then log on this way. And now we're logged on as Bob Bass, and you can see all the emails that have been sent over to Bob Bass. Okay, so fairly simple, when we take a look at this, not too difficult to actually figure this out and log in. Now let's take a quick look over on Exchange 1. We won't get too deep into this, but I at least want to show you what powers this whole piece. So I'm going to open up System Manager here on Exchange 1. Okay, and if we look within here, go down into our servers, Exchange 1, and then protocols, here's the HTTP protocol, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Okay, and you're going to see here when we try to actually manage this Exchange virtual server, and this is what's powering Outlook Web Access, okay, it tells us to configure various other settings on this HTTP virtual server, use the IIS snap-in. Okay, so the only thing we can do is enable what's called forms-based authentication. Let's hold off on this 1 second, we'll come back to it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open up Internet Information Services. Okay, and now here, if I take a look within Exchange 1, I open up websites. Here's my default website, and this is where your Exchange server is going to be basically working with by default. You see that we have the Exchange virtual directory right here. Okay, underneath this, you really see nothing here, but this Exchange virtual directory connects to the back end, connects to the Exchange mailboxes, and that's how all that information is able to be pulled up. Okay, you can see right here, this is where the actual path is, where it connects to the mailboxes. Okay, so all sorts of other stuff. We'll get into this a little bit down here when we set up server security here in a little bit. Okay, so let's exit out of here. Just wanted to show this to you. By the way, you should be aware if you run into problems, let's say that you have a problem with Outlook Web Access and it's just kind of intermittent problem, you can't figure out what it is, you may want to come in here and stop and restart the website. A lot of times, just like any service, giving it a stop and then start again can solve your problem without doing a major troubleshooting or reinstallation or anything. Okay, back here on the Exchange virtual server once again, if I right click and go to properties, I can enable what's called forms-based authentication. Okay, now you can also set compression, none, low, or high. We're going to leave it on the default none. What this will do is give you a different authentication window. Let's go ahead and click OK here. Okay, and when you see this, it tells you that it requires clients to use a SSL connection. If SSL encryption is not offloaded to another source, complete the following steps. Okay, so we have to configure SSL first before we can actually do this. Okay, so we'll come back to this once we've installed our SSL certificate on this web server. We'll come back to this and take a look at forms-based authentication once again. Okay, so let's exit out of Exchange 1 now. Oops. And the next thing we're going to do is basically connect over to the internet. We're going to show you how to connect over the internet, and to do this we need to connect over to XP1. Okay, and then from there we're going to go into our NAT settings and then show you how to configure DNS. So we're through the overview. We've showed you how to connect locally. Next we're going to do the internet, and then we'll go straight into the NAT configuration from there. Alright, XP1 currently is not on the local network. What we've done here is put it on a different segment. And you can see here when I double click and connect out to XP1, it's now on the segment 192.168.1.67. Okay, and the way I'm able to connect to this, my base system has two network cards that are plugged into two different networks. Now, this is not really that important to you, but the reason we're doing it this way is so we can simulate this XP1 machine physically being on a different network. Okay, let's take a closer look on our diagram before we get in here. Okay, so what's happening right now, previous to this, XP1 has been on this local network. Now what we're simulating by plugging in XP1 to a different network is we're out here on the internet somewhere in some local network over here. So here's our local network, and what we're going to basically be doing is connecting to the internet from this local network as well. And that's essentially what we have. There's a firewall in place even, connects out to the internet, and we need to connect over the internet inside this firewall and then reach this Exchange server right here. Okay? To do this, what we're going to have to do is first connect to XP1 like I said, and we're going to log on here as Ray Moray. Okay, and once Ray Moray logs on here, what we're going to see, we're going to have to log off the other user first. And that's okay, because what we can do here, I just got to demonstrate something to you briefly before we go on to the next piece. Okay, what we can do here, we can access the internet right now. So if I open up Internet Explorer, you'll see that I can get out to the internet. However, when I try to connect to my web server, and right now I'm just going to type in a public IP address, 69, here it is right here. Okay, here's the public IP address that's sitting on my NAT server. So in the future, once we have this configured correctly, this IP address will connect me to the NAT server, and then we're using port 80, and then we're going to be supplying this /exchange. And eventually this is going to work, and Outlook Web Access will then connect us through. In this case right now though, when we try to make this work, it's actually going to fail. And the reason it's failing right now is because we have not configured our NAT server yet. Remember, the NAT server right now is only forwarding port 25 or SMTP protocol. What we need to do is go over to the NAT server and configure that special port to forward port 80. So let's leave this right where it's at and we'll come right back to it. Okay, NAT1. So we're logging on to NAT1 as the domain administrator. We're going to open up routing and remote access. We're going into NAT and basic firewall, and then from here we're just going to right click WAN, go to properties, and we need to configure our services and ports. Okay, down here we're looking for HTTP, okay, web server, and by default when we select this, it's going to give us TCP port 80, and this is the default protocol that Hypertext Transfer Protocol works off of. The default port number and protocol, TCP port 80. Now we just need to input the internal web server, okay, and that's actually on Exchange 1. So we put in 192.168.200.100. Okay, now you may question, remember on our last NAT setting, we configured it to point to the SMTP relay server, 192.168.200.150. And the reason we did that, remember, because we wanted email to flow in through the NAT server, then to the SMTP relay server, and then to Exchange 1. Well, in this case, remember, we're just forming a connection to Exchange server. This isn't actually sending email over this port. Okay, so this is the right configuration. I'll explain this in a little bit more detail once we have this working. Okay, so make sure this is selected. Then I click OK. And that's all there is to it. Real simple as far as the configuration is concerned. So that's all that we're going to have to do here on the NAT server for right now. So let's go ahead and close this. And now what we're going to do is just reconnect back over to XP1. Okay, let's try this one more time. Might take a little bit of time for the setting to refresh and for that service to actually register the fact that it's now forwarding this port. But this should be good enough for it to work. Okay, it supplies us with our authentication box. And now if we log on, let's just use Ray Morey's account. Okay, it doesn't work, but typically when we come in over the internet, that's because we have to supply our authentication with a domain name. So I'm going to enter in Sophie's Toy Box, just like you see right here. Okay, and then I'm going to put in the password once again. Okay, and just like that, now we're able to log in and authenticate, and we're able to reach this from a remote network. Okay, so keep that in mind. Right now, XP1 is not on a local network. It's on a remote network going over the internet, connecting to this Outlook web access server. Okay, so just like that, it's very simple to get this up and running. Now, what we want to do at this point, we want to add on some different features. Okay, we don't want to use just a plain old IP address. What we'd like to do is associate a host name, so our users can type in a host name and reach this actual domain here, can reach the actual web server. So what we're going to use is OWA mail, okay, Outlook Web Access Mail, OWA mail, .sophiestoybox.com. So we're going to have to go over to GoDaddy here in a second and configure a CNAME record to point to the proper IP address. Okay, so we'll show you that in just one second. Now, while we're here, let's take a closer look at some of the different things we can do within the Outlook Web Access Client. A lot of this stuff is self-explanatory, and you're going to learn it best by clicking around and getting a feel for it. I'm very happy with this tool. It's a huge improvement over Exchange 2000 to the point where I'm pretty picky about my email client, and I feel pretty good about using this as my remote email client instead of having to worry about forming a VPN connection and then accessing the full Exchange or full Outlook mailbox. Okay, but some things you can do, just like in Outlook, we can kind of switch views. With this one, it shows everything down here. If you click this button, okay, it then goes away. You can see that you have just about everything you have in your normal view. Something that I really like, if you right click here, you can click New Folder. Okay, and then this is blocked. Let's get rid of our pop-ups here. Okay, let's try that again. New folder. Okay, and I'm just going to create this and call it Saved Items. Okay, Mail Items, Inbox, click OK. And now all of a sudden I've got a saved folder. Okay, now this is no big deal itself, but what I love is that you can take your full saved folder, and I've got hundreds of these things, hundreds of saved folders. All of these are accessible in Outlook 2003. So now you don't have to, be away from your desktop, away from your full Outlook client, and not be able to access your old archived emails that you have saved in different saved folders. Okay, you still have the junk email feature, so you can go in here and you can see if you have any junk email that's been thrown in there. Contacts, calendar, all this information is just as it was if you're logged on locally. Okay, and that's something that's important to keep in mind when you're looking at this right now. This is your actual full mailbox. It's not like you're looking at a offline version of it. Okay, this is your full mailbox. Okay, other features up here, new message. If you click this right here, you can move or copy a message. Here you've got reply, reply to all, forward. Okay, here we've got another show or hide the reading pane. You can toggle off where the reading pane actually is. So that's kind of convenient. especially when we have low resolution or less resolution on the screen like we do right now. Send, receive. Here we have an address book. Here's another feature in 2003 that we don't have in 2000. Right now we're actually able to search in the global address list. We don't have to use an offline address list like we did in Exchange 2000. So I can actually type in a display name here. So I can just type in, let's go down to the last name. Let's say we're looking for a user, last name's Pike. We do a find and it brings up Sue Pike here. Okay, so it actually queries the Active Directory and looks for information. So you can use any of this information you see right here, and then right here we just click New Message, and it then will create that new message, and you see here her Exchange alias or display name automatically pops up here. Okay, so a much improved email experience. When we look down here, let's just type in a couple things here. I'm going to intentionally misspell a word here. Okay, it's got a spell check feature within here, so we can actually do spell check, oops, not attachment, but spell check. So it's going to go through, select which language you want to use. We're going to use English, United States. Always check spelling before sending if you want to do that. Check document, it's now checking it. No spelling errors were found. It must have this in a dictionary somehow or another, so let's put in something a little bit more obvious here and try that again. Okay, so it found this misspelled word, and luckily it found that. I'd be scared if it had a word in the dictionary for that. So, you know, same type of thing you have in Microsoft Word. You can input what you meant to put in there. Okay, and then just click change, and that'll substitute it for you. And notice here we also have, you know, full HTML email capabilities. So if I want to modify the font color, I can do this. I can center stuff. I can change the font. Okay, and it is somewhat limited. You don't have full, you know, Word capabilities when you're doing this. But for a remote, you know, web-based email client, you have quite a bit of features. Up top, you can do things like set the importance, lower the importance. We have options just like we do when we're working in the full email client, where we can set the importance or the sensitivity. We can request a delivery receipt. So all this stuff is important when we're sending emails. Okay, so that just gives you a feel for what we can do. We're going to go ahead and click OK to lose that change and then close out of here. Other stuff that you have in here, public folders we haven't talked about yet, but we can access our public folders. Right now, public folders just aren't available because we have not enabled these yet. So you'll see that in a second once we've turned those on in our next 2 videos from now, actually. Rules, if you want to set up mailbox rules, you can set up a new mailbox rule to determine how email is going to be forwarded or sent. This is something that you can really take a closer look at when you're working in the full Outlook client. And then we have options. And within these options, a lot of other cool things as well that will control your online experience. Okay, if we want to show less emails, we can display a fewer number. We can display more. We can, you know, automatically right here just put in here that we're out of the office. So if you forget to actually set this setting or talk to the Exchange administrator before you leave, your user can actually log on and set this themselves. Very, very handy. You can add a signature. You can edit your signature from here. Spelling options, email security. If you have, I believe it's Internet Explorer 6.0, you can actually use email security and actually use S-MIME to encrypt your email. Okay, privacy and junk filtering, so all this stuff. I don't want to exhaust all these things, but play around in here, get a good feel for how this works, because there's a lot of features that they didn't have in Outlook Web Access for Exchange 2000. All right, so we've got that set up. Our next mission now is to go back over to our desktop, and we're going to connect out to GoDaddy. Okay, we're logged on here to GoDaddy, and we're in the Train Signal account, and you can see we're in the Manage Domain section. Now here, I'm going to go to the domain we're working with for this particular lab, sophystoybox.com. I'm going to select this, and then what it's going to do is pull up the contact information over here on the right-hand side, and we're going to be working with total DNS control, just like we did in an earlier video. Now what this does, the DNS is still hosted on GoDaddy servers, okay, but we have complete DNS control, so we can come in here and change these settings any way we wish. Alright, so when we look here, some things to note that we've already done. We set up this SMTP host record earlier in this video course. And this currently is pointing, SMTP is pointing to 69.128.98.220. Okay, so this is the host name that's used to actually point out to our public server right now, public IP address, the NAT server, 69.128.98.220. In addition to that, we had to create this host record because we set up an MX record. And MX records are set up to basically mail exchange or take email that's sent to the sophystoybox.com domain and then point that to the appropriate host record. And you can see right here that this is pointed to smtp.sophystoybox.com. Okay? And then that right here, smtp.sophystoybox.com, points to this IP address. So in effect, any email that's sent out to smtp.sophystoybox.com is going to reach this IP address and be delivered. Now, kind of similar to that, we have CNAMEs or aliases. Okay, CNAMEs is for canonical names. And what we can do here is create records that are aliased or point to our host records. These, as you noticed, or maybe you didn't notice, I'll point out to you now, are the only records that have names and IP addresses. Okay, so your CNAMEs and your MX records are going to point to your host records. Now what we've done here, if you look, I've set up a record called OWA mail and it points to smtp.sophystoybox.com. So that points to this record, smtp.sophystoybox.com. That then in turn points to this IP address. So anytime somebody types into a browser OWA mail.sophystoybox.com, it's going to basically point them to this IP address. From here to here and then to this IP address. Okay, let me show you how to set this up. It's real simple to set up this record. To set up this alias record, you just have to click down below, Add New CNAME Record. I'm going to click Edit here. This has already been set up and I don't want to modify this because it does take some time for this change to propagate, so I'm not going to change anything on it. All that you have to do is enter in OWA mail for the alias name and then point to the actual host name like we said before, smtp.sophystoybox.com. This time to live value set at 1 hour, this is how long this information will be cached on the DNS server that picks up this information. Leave the defaults, this is no big deal here. Frequently cached like 1 hour is really no big deal, so we're going to leave this low setting and go forward from there. I'm going to click cancel because I've already configured this setting. I don't need to continue and keep the setting. Now the point of all this, when our users are out on the internet and they want to connect into their mailboxes using Outlook Web Access, I don't want them to have to remember an IP address. Now what they can type in is owamail.sophystoybox.com/exchange. That's going to be necessary to point to that particular virtual directory. Okay, they can type this in and they're going to connect automatically to their mailbox. They are going to have to authenticate, of course, but once they authenticate, they'll then be connected to their mailbox. Okay, so this is all set up right now. What we need to do basically then, make sure the NAT server is configured, and we've already done that. We opened up port 80. We've got that redirected to the appropriate mail server. So we should be able to go to a browser right now, type in owamail.sophystoybox.com/exchange, and be able to log on and authenticate to our Outlook Web Access server. Okay, let's go try that out. So I'm going to close GoDaddy. We're going to go over to XP1 and simulate that we're on the internet here once again. So let's close this, and now we're going to reopen that. Okay, so we're just going to type in here http://owamail.sophystoybox.com/exchange, just like you see right here. Okay, pretty convenient. I hit enter here, and now we see the authentication box, which is a good sign. I can then log on with my credentials. You're going to have to supply your domain name. Okay, and then I'm going to log in with Ray Moray. Ray's password. Click OK, and now we have access to his mailbox. Okay, pretty cool how you can just use this DNS name up above and have this map back to the appropriate IP address. Okay, so once you have the DNS stuff down, real easy to set this particular piece up. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. Let's check out Firefox. We haven't had a chance to use this yet, but we've installed Mozilla Firefox version 1.0.1 here. So we're going to open this up and see if we can't access this in the exact same way. See how it looks different. Okay, so same thing, OWA mail. /exchange. And here it has a different logon prompt, but same concept. So we just need to supply, once again, the domain name, the logon name, the password, and then we click OK. Now I didn't mention this before, but this password manager, remembering the password, whether it's here in Firefox or in Internet Explorer, it's not recommended that you do this, especially when you're doing this, possibly from a, let's say, a public computer like the library or an internet cafe. In those cases, definitely don't do it. And be careful, because this information, this is going to be cached in Internet Explorer. It's saved, and if you save the password, anybody can open up your browser and then access your email. Okay, so you can see right here, it's just slightly different when you're looking at it in this level, and some of the features are disabled. So when we look right here, notice that we don't have that toggle button. All of these buttons just here are automatically on. Okay, and there's going to be some things that we don't have. We can still do the vast majority of things. Okay, we still have all of our options, and if we're composing email, let's go back up here to the inbox and click a new email. Okay, here notice that we no longer have the ability to use that rich text where we're able to put in the font, change the color, change the font size, all that stuff. Okay, and that's because this particular version, Firefox, doesn't support all the full features. You have a basically a dumbed down version of Outlook Web Access. Okay, it still works, still very effective. You just don't have all the bells and whistles that you saw when we were within Internet Explorer. Okay, so we've knocked that out. We've taken care of DNS and NAT settings, so we pretty much have an effective Outlook Web Access piece up and running right now. All that stuff is set up. What we want to do now, though, is add some security. Okay, you probably didn't notice this, but there was no secure socket layer lock in the bottom right-hand corner of the browser. So when we're logging on, we're actually supplying the username and password across the internet in clear text. Anybody with a sniffer program, a packet analyzer, can analyze those packets and easily pull out the username and password. So what we're going to do, we're going to work on basically first setting up a certificate request. This is going to be done within IIS 6.0 on Exchange 1. We're then going to take that request, we're going to go out to GoDaddy, and we're going to set up a new secure sockets layer certificate. We're then going to get that information, import it into the web server, and make our OWA, secure socket layer OWA setup. So that way, every time somebody's logging on, they're going to have to supply a username or password, and it's going to be done in an encrypted fashion. They're going to be using secure HTTP or HTTPS. Okay, let's go do it. All right, so we're going to connect out to Exchange 1. Within Exchange 1, we need to open up Internet Information Services Manager. Okay, let's expand this, and we're going to open up Exchange 1, open up our websites. Here on the default website, we just need to right-click, go down to Properties, and we have all sorts of tabs. We're not going to go through all these. This is explained in our web servers course. We'll go to the Directory Security tab here, and then under Secure Communications, let's click on Server Certificate. Okay, so welcome to the Web Server Certificate Wizard. From here, we're just going to go through this wizard. Most of it is somewhat self-explanatory, but we'll explain the stuff that doesn't make sense. So we're going to create a new certificate. Next, prepare the request now, but send it later. So we're going to create a request. This is going to be done within a text file. We're going to take this text information out to GoDaddy, and then we're going to be able to generate our certificate based upon that. Okay. Now, first area of information, we need to identify what the certificate is for, okay, and it doesn't have to be any official name. I like to be as descriptive as possible. We're using it for OWA, so I'm going to call it OWA certificate, and I'm just putting in SSL secure socket layer here. The bit length by default is at 1024. You can increase this or you can lower it. Okay, the higher the bit length, the more encryption you're going to have. The stronger that encryption is going to be, more secure it's going to be. However, the higher this encryption, the more overhead that's involved, the slower it's going to be as far as resolving the encryption, and the actual transmission between the Outlook Web Access client and the user is going to be a little bit slower as well. 1024 is great. You're getting quite a bit of security with that, so let's leave that there, and then let's go ahead and click Next. Okay, for an organization, we have nothing here in our drop-down box, so we're going to just supply an organization here. We're going to use Sophie's Toy Box Inc. You don't want any punctuation in here, so leave out any commas, periods, anything like that, apostrophes. We don't want to use that here. For the organizational unit, we're going to be using and entering in corporate. Okay, corporate here. So we're going to click next then. And by the way, you can use anything here. We really have just one small office. So if you had a different branch office, a city, maybe it's for a particular department in your company, you could put that department in here. It's just kind of really within the Sophie's Toy Box company, what unit of organization is this? This has nothing to do with Active Directory organizational units, so it doesn't need to replicate that or anything like that. Okay, so we have corporate, click next. A common name for this, and this is a really important setting right here. Okay, some people will put in exchange1.sophiestoybox.local, their the common name on the certificate. If you read up here though, if the server is on the internet, use a valid DNS name. Okay, so if the server is on the internet, you may prefer to use the company's or computer's NetBIOS name. Well, this computer is going to be internet accessible, and remember, people are going to be typing in owamail.sophiestoybox.com, and that's what they're going to be using to access this system. That's what we want to enter in here. Okay, it's going to be owamail.sophiestoybox.com. Incredibly important that you spell this correctly, so double check, make sure that you have this spelled correctly, otherwise you're going to be regenerating your certificate request or revoking your certificate if you made it that far without realizing the mistake. Okay, Sophie's is based out of the United States. The state is Louisiana. The city is New Orleans. Okay, so we'll put in all this stuff. Did I misspell Louisiana here? I think I did. There we go. Okay, click next. Then the file name, you can leave the default. This is just going to create a certificate request file right on the root of the C drive. Easy enough to find. Click next. Verify your information. I'm going to double check this again. sophiestoybox.com, OWA certificate, US, Louisiana, New Orleans. Everything looks good to me. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, click next, and then finish. Okay, so we click OK, and that's all that we have here for right now. Let's go take a look at the C drive. Okay, find our certificate request. Here it is, certrequest.txt. Wow. Okay, all this stuff basically is the encryption key. We're going to supply this to GoDaddy, and this is what they're going to use to actually generate our certificate, believe it or not. Okay, so we need to take this file and basically connect over to GoDaddy. What I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this file over to the local machine right now, and then we'll stop the video. I'm going to put it on the desktop of the XP base system, and we'll start up there once we've logged on to GoDaddy. Okay, we've logged on to GoDaddy now, and what you're going to be doing is purchasing a certificate first from GoDaddy. Okay, so this is a requirement ahead of time. For this particular video, we've purchased just a Turbo certificate, and this is just a brand name that GoDaddy uses. This is one of their cheaper certificates, so you just need to go through and kind of decide which is the best one for you after looking at the features. Okay, for what we're doing here though, this definitely suits the purpose. It's just $29.95 for a year, so what we've done is gone through and bought this. Clicking buy now will take you through their shopping cart in just a matter of, clicking the personalized information for you, credit card information, PayPal account, whatever it might be, to purchase this certificate. Now, after you've purchased the certificate, you'll then have a credit issued to your account. Okay, so for example, if we go over here right now, we can go to Secure Certs, Manage Secure Certificates, and then down here you'll get something similar to this where it says New Certificate, and then you can manage your certificate. On the right hand side, this is where you will have a certificate credit. I've already gone ahead and gone to the next screen. I advanced past this, and we're set, ready to go. So a little bit confusing at first, but just after you've purchased your certificate, it'll show up here underneath Secure Certs, Manage Secure Certificates. Okay, and then on the right hand side down here, there's a screen that will take you out and let you manage your certificate. And that's what we've done right here. It actually takes you out to a third party or a different website where you can manage your certificates. All right, so what I've done, I've gone ahead and I'm using this, what they call certificate credit, this 1-year Turbo SSL certificate. Now, where will this certificate be hosted? On a GoDaddy.com hosting, on a GoDaddy.com dedicated or virtual dedicated server account, or with a third-party hosting provider. Well, we're going to be hosting this ourselves. This is actually going to be our Exchange server, so this is the choice you want to make. So now we just click Request Certificate. Okay, so down below you're going to see different organizational information. Okay, you would have to input this in here on the left-hand side, and then step 2, they're asking for information from you, okay, regarding your CSR. And the CSR information, if we look at the sample, okay, this should look familiar. Okay, and this certificate signing request, as you see up here, is real similar to the one we had before. So what we need to do is open up that text file, and I've copied this text file over to the desktop here and open it up. We're just going to do a edit, select all. It's already selected, so edit, select all. Then I'm going to copy this. Now I can close this. I no longer need it. I'm going to paste it right here. Okay, I'm going to hit backspace just to make sure there's no spaces here between the end of this text, like you see right there. Select your web server. Okay, so in this particular case, we're running Microsoft Internet Information Services. Okay, I warrant and represent that I'm a registrant, blah, 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 blah. Make sure that you are fine with that, though. Click Continue. Okay, and now it's actually going to check the actual information. It reads all that cryptographic information, and then down here, you can see that it comes up with the common name, who the requester is, web server type, and the type of certificate that is requested. All this information is listed right here. So now we just click Continue. Okay, and then it says, thank you, your certificate request information has been submitted. Okay, so that's all that there is to it. It's really simple once you get through it. I find that all the mess up front is more confusing than the actual process of getting your certificate. Now what happens, it's going to be emailed to your default email account that's associated with GoDaddy. Okay, mine is actually on a different computer. So what's going to have to happen, mine's going to be emailed to me. I'm going to go ahead and send the certificate information over to this account, and then we'll be able to get started and actually install the certificate onto the Exchange server. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video. I'll be right back in a second. Okay, I've already received that, and the first thing you actually receive that you need to look out for, there is a email that's sent out to the registrant of the domain. It's important that whoever gets that email needs to actually go out to the link that GoDaddy supplies and approves the certificate request. Okay, the certificate actually won't be emailed until that request is approved. After it's approved, the certificate comes over almost instantaneously after that. It's all automated. And what I've done from my other email account, it's just been forwarded over to this email account here. So you can see right here, here's the actual, oops, that's not the right one. What's happened actually, GFI Mail Essentials got in the way, and it looks like it, yep, issued a default attachment checking rule. The file was blocked by the attachment checking module. We're just going to approve this. Okay, and then after approving this, now we should see our email come to us here in a second, the actual email that contains the certificate information. Okay, and here it is. All right, so you see here that basically GoDaddy said, Dear Secure Certificate Customer, we have successfully completed the authentication process. They've given us the certificate information in the attached zip file. So what we're going to do is just extract this on our desktop here. We'll take a look at this here momentarily. Okay, so that's all we need from here. I'm going to double click this, and we're going to extract all of our files. Let's put them right on our desktop. Okay. All right, so we've got these two files and then our certificate installation instructions. Okay, so this is the actual certificate that's issued to the server itself, and this one here is for the subordinate certificate. We're going to take a look at this, but this certificate is necessary to install to complete the actual chain up to the root hierarchy certificate server. So if we look at the certification path, here's the actual path that's taken. Here's the root certificate holder here. This is a subordinate right here. Okay, and then this one that we're looking at down here is the actual certificate that we're going to be installing on our Exchange server. So what we need to do is actually install this certificate as well as this certificate, and that's what we're going to take a look at right now. Okay, so we're going to need to copy these over to our server. So what I'm going to do is just cut, paste these into a shared folder we have right here. Okay, now we're going to connect over to Exchange 1, and then from Exchange 1 we will just access this shared folder. So we actually don't need the certificate installation instructions, we just need our certificates themselves. So we're going to do a cut and then paste to our desktop here. Okay, so here are two certificates. We looked momentarily at owamail.sophystoybox.com. If we look at this certificate, it tells us right here, basically it's issued to Starfield Secure Certification Authority, which is just the company that's issuing it. Details, certification path. You see right here that this is the intermediate certificate, and it's basically the subordinate to this trusted root certificate. And this is typical in a certificate hierarchy. You know, you don't get a certificate directly issued from the root certificate. You're typically getting it from a subordinate like we just got right now. Okay, and then once again, if you look at our certificate, it includes both the root, okay, and then also the intermediate certificate or the subordinate to the root right here. Okay, let's go ahead and install these certificates now. So to do this, first we need to install our intermediate certificate. To do this, we're going to go to Start, Run, and we're going to open up a Microsoft Management Console, and we need to add the certificates snap-in. So we're going to go to File, Add Remove Snap-in, Add, and we're looking for this certificates snap-in right here. So we just click Add. It's going to be for the computer account. Click Next. It's going to be for the local computer, and we can just click Finish and Close. Okay, click OK one more time, and now you see that we have the certificates snap-in here in our MMC console. Okay, let's go ahead and open this up. Now this reveals the different certificate stores that we have on this local server. We're going to take a look here inside the intermediate certification authorities and inside certificates. Now currently right now the only certificates we have are these 5 certificates that you see. So what we're going to have to do is actually install this intermediate certification authority certificate inside this certificate store here that you see. Okay, how do we do that? Well, we're going to right click, go to All Tasks, and then go to Import. Okay, and this is just going to import that certificate. So we got to basically just go through this wizard. Next, we're going to browse for the file name, and this is on our desktop. And it's this one. Make sure you select this certificate. This is the one we're importing. Okay, place all certificates in the following store. Okay, you can either browse to it, or it's going to go into that one that we had selected by default, and that's what we want. So we click Next, and then we just click Finish. Okay, and the import was successful. Now you see that this certificate does exist here in the Intermediate Certification Authority's certificate store. Okay, not too bad, and we're all set here. So what we're going to do now is just go ahead and minimize the snap-in, and we're going to go over to Internet Information Services Manager, and now it's time to actually import this web certificate into our default website. So we need to right-click the default website, and we're going to go down and select Properties. From here, we're going over to the Directory Security tab, and now we're going over to Server Certificate once again. Okay, welcome to this wizard. This looks the same. However, now we have a pending request, so it's not going to generate a new certificate. Now what we're going to do is actually process the pending request and install the certificate. So I click Next. Now I need to browse and actually find that certificate, and we've got that sitting on our desktop. So I'm going over to the desktop. Notice that it doesn't show up, and that's because files of type is at a .cer file. We're just going to go to All Files, and this CRT file now shows up. Make sure that you're installing the owamail.sophystoybox.com, whatever your domain is here, but make sure you're installing that particular certificate. So I select this, click Open, click Next. We're going to be using SSL port 443, which is the default. We don't want to change that. Click Next, and that's it. Verify your settings here. Click Next once again, and we're all finished. Okay, let's click OK here, and now we have the certificate installed on the web server. Now, that does not set up SSL yet. We need to enable this, and there's a couple different areas where we can enable it at. If you wanted to, you could actually go to the default website, Properties, go to Directory Security again, and then click Edit. We can enable SSL right here. I don't recommend that you do it on the default website, though. What ends up happening, you run into a lot of issues with public folders not working correctly and OMA not working correctly. You're better off, since this certificate is really for Outlook Web Access anyway, put it directly on your Exchange directory here. So what I'm going to do is select this Exchange directory, go down to Properties, Directory Security, and now I'm going to go to Edit. All right, here I can require secure channel SSL. If I want higher encryption, I can also require 128-bit encryption for even more security here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and select this. Internet Explorer, in its latest browsers, almost everybody now is using 128-bit encryption. Okay, so I'll select this, click OK again, and SSL is now enabled on this particular virtual directory, so only the Outlook Web Access virtual directory. Okay, let's go test this out. We're going to go back over to XP1 now. So we're sitting here, we're logged on as the administrative account, which is fine. We'll just log on here. We're going to be using a different username anyway for Outlook Web Access. So let's open up Internet Explorer. I'm going to put a shortcut here so we got it easy next time. Okay, and what we're going to do is just bring up that exact same URL that we had before. Okay, so http owamail.sophystoybox.com exchange. Okay, and here's what we get. The page must be viewed over a secure channel, basically HTTPS. If you're not familiar with this, this is the secure hypertext transfer protocol setting, and anytime we have SSL enabled, which we see right here, SSL is required to view this resource, then you're going to have to use HTTPS. Okay, so I hit enter in here. Now it's giving us the security alert telling us that we're about to connect to a secure page. So I click OK. However, when I try to connect to it, this is going to time out. It's actually not able to connect. So it may take a couple seconds here, but you're going to see we actually don't have the ability to connect over right now. Okay, what's the problem here? We've had this come up on several different occasions now. Anytime we have a new port involved, we have to go back over to that NAT server and add a different services and ports exception. Okay, so we're going to go back to our desktop, and from here we need to connect out to the NAT server. Okay, this is our internet gateway device, and you should be somewhat familiar with this device at this point right now. So we're going to open up routing and remote access. Okay, and here on this NAT basic firewall, we just need to do the exact same thing we've done 2 times already. We're going to go in here to, over here, to properties, go to services and ports, and then right here we have to go down here and then find the appropriate service and port that we want to enable. Okay, and in this case we're going to be using a secure web server, as you see right here. So we're going to select this service. It opens it up, and notice what we have. By default, the public address is the one. It's on this interface is where this service is going to be allowed. Protocol is TCP. Default port is 443. Our private IP address that we're going to be connecting to. Remember, this is for Outlook Web Access. We don't have to go through the SMTP gateway here. We put in 192.168.200.100. Now, I brought this up before, and you may be confused as to why we don't need to go through that SMTP gateway. Before we test, we'll test this out, make sure that it works, and after it works, we'll come back and we'll explain that concept just to make sure that you're comfortable with what I'm talking about. Okay, so we're going to go connect to XP1, and at this point right now, we should see that if we just put in a normal HTTPS when we try to connect, we still get the same page must be viewed over a secure channel. However, if we put in the HTTPS and hit enter, now we should be getting our authentication box popping up, provided all of our configurations are set up and configured correctly. So let's give this a second here to actually work. And then I can think of already what our problem is. Over on the NAT server, I'm thinking right now that we forgot to check the checkbox that I insisted that you check before. So let's connect back over to the NAT server here real quick and take a look. Okay, routing and remote access, WAN, properties, services and ports, and that's exactly what happened. I went in here, it opens it up automatically. Somehow or another it didn't even get saved, so we got to re-enable this. So we're going to put in here the IP address once again. Okay, OK. Check this checkbox, and then click OK all the way out. Okay, let's try this one more time again. Let's connect back over to XP1 and see if we can't get this to work. Aha! Finally got it to work. Okay, and look what we have here. We have a new form actually, and this is part of, this is that Outlook forms that we were talking about before. And this is because we now have SSL and we wanted to enable that before. So this is a new way of logging on. Not really a huge difference, but this will allow you to give your users some more flexibility in the options they specify when they log on. So you still have to put in the domain and username. Okay, still have to put in the password, of course. You have the choice of premium or basic, and this is basically depending upon what browser you're running. If we see right here, premium client provides all Outlook Web Access features. The basic client provides fewer features, but offers faster performance. Use this if you're on a slow connection, or sometimes you'll be forced into using this basic based upon the type of browser that you're using. Okay, security. Public or shared computer or a private computer. This right here tells you exactly what it does. This is basically going to, your Exchange server will allow a longer period of inactivity before logging you off. By selecting this option, you acknowledge that the computer complies with your organization's security policy. Okay, so this will be more of a pain for you, but if you leave your station, I don't know what the default is, but let's say 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, just automatically log you off. You'll run into less issues with this. Let's assume that this is where we're at right now. Let's leave the public or shared computer option selected. So I click log on, and after that first initial box, this is pretty much what we've seen before. Notice that with the premium access, I have features like this that toggle back and forth. When I send an email, I've got all of my fonts and headings and bold, italics, underline, all these features we have available to us. Let's try this one more time. Let's log on this time with the other version. Okay, so we're going to go back here to our, where's it at? Going to go back here to our secure connection. Okay, so we're going to type in here Sophie's Toy Box. This time we'll select basic down here and we'll click log on once again. Okay, and you see right here we don't have the same types of features we had before. This view is stuck. When we click new for message, we just don't have the same options over here as well. Okay, another thing, we don't have as much room. May not be a bigger deal on a higher resolution computer, higher resolution monitor, but in the other version it actually pops up a separate dialog box so you have a complete different screen to type your email into. Okay, either way this should work, and it should also work in Mozilla Firefox. If we open this up, we should be able to connect back out. Going to have to use a secure channel. Okay, but we should be able to connect just as we did before. Okay, and we get the same type of box here. Notice that we don't have that premium selection anymore, and that's because of the browser that we're using. We're forced into that basic selection that we were referring to before. Okay, so you see we can log on with Mozilla Firefox just as easily as we can with Internet Explorer, but we don't have the extra options. Okay, so pretty cool there. Okay, 3 more little things that we want to show you here. And this just can kind of make your life simpler. We're going to connect back over to Exchange 1, and then we're going to open up that System Manager. Okay, and here in System Manager, that forms-based authentication that we were referring to before, I want to show you where that was again, just to make sure that you understand why that different logon screen was coming up. So we're going to go into Servers, Exchange 1, Protocols, and then here within HTTP, if you go to this Exchange virtual server, really the only thing that we can set is to enable forms-based authentication. Okay, if we deselect this box, it takes away that ability to have that whole form that we saw before that provides you with the different options. Okay, so that's why this is up. Now, normally this is off by default. The reason why this just enables was because we selected it before and we finally have SSL enabled on our web server. Okay, I'm going to leave this here, so I'm just going to cancel out of here. And then we have a couple more things to show you. One is in the Internet Information Services Manager. Okay, what we can do, you noticed before when we were logging on to OWA, we had to supply the domain name and the username. That's kind of a pain. So if you want to try to make things easier on your users, one thing you can do is go back into your default website, and you can set this on the website or on the virtual directory Exchange itself. Just go down to Properties, Directory Security, and then go to Edit on the Authentication and Access Control button. Down here below, the default domain can be selected just by clicking Select here, and it pulls up the local domain, sophistoybox.local. So we click OK here, and you see that it fills it in automatically for you. Then we just have to click OK all the way out. Okay, so I'm done with that setting there. What we can do here quickly then, let's just go back over to our remote desktop connection, open up XP1 here, and try to use OWA here one more time. So I'm going to open up this connection out to the Exchange server. Here we have that form that I was talking about a second ago, because that forms-based authentication. And now, instead of having to put in my whole domain name, I can just type in Ray Moray and his password. Okay, click Login, and now I'm logged right on to the Outlook Web Access server here. Okay, so kind of convenient. I like using this because it just makes life a little bit easier, less to type out, which is always a good thing. Okay, done with that. Let's go back over to Exchange one more time, and the last thing we need to show you is how to disable Outlook Web Access if you don't want an individual user to have access to it. Okay, and we have a couple different options here. Number one, you may not want Outlook Web Access at all in your company, and if that's the case, fairly straightforward. You just have to go into that Internet Information Services again, and remember that this virtual directory right here controls Outlook Web Access. Okay, so you can change the settings here. You can delete this directory. I wouldn't recommend that you delete it. And by doing this, what you're going to do is just disable Outlook Web Access for the whole company. If you don't need it, you can stop the web server, but that's going to cause other issues with public servers, so that's not a recommendation. On a user-by-user basis, which is more likely the scenario in companies, you can also disable Outlook Web Access by opening up Active Directory users and computers. Let's say that my warehouse people, they really don't need access to email except for internal email, and they have no need to access email from home. Well, what I can do, right-click, go to Properties, and we're going to browse over here to the Exchange Features tab. And here in the Exchange Features tab, you see right here that we have Outlook Web Access enabled using protocol defaults. We just need to select this, click Disable, and just like that, Angelfish, no longer has access to Outlook Web Access. And that's simple enough to test. We'll connect right back over here to XP1, open this up, and you can see that if we come here right now, Ray Moray can log on, or let's even use a different user. Let's use who do we have here? Sue Pike. I don't think we've used her at all yet. Okay, Sue Pike can log on without a problem. Let's see if Angelfish can log on though. Okay, A Fish. Okay, you're not authorized to view this page, so this is what they'll see. So fairly straightforward, easy to configure, and on an individual basis, this works great. Okay, last thing we need to look at briefly here is just this Linksys router setup. Real simple setup. We'll just go in there quickly, take a look at the interface, and show you what you would need to input if you have a Linksys router. Okay, so we're going to put in the IP address, if I can get it typed in here correctly. Okay, and I've just unplugged the NAT server, by the way, and plugged in the Linksys router so you can see this interface here. That's why we have the same IP address for both the Linksys router and the NAT server. Okay, so we're logged on here, and we need to go over to the same location we went to before, and that's Applications and Gaming, and it's really no different than we see here. And this, by the way, I don't know if you saw this added before. This is for Remote Desktop Protocol. This actually got Remote Desktop enabled, so this machine is accessible. It's actually allowing Remote Desktop to pass by through the Linksys router. Okay, this is the default protocol 3389, and this allows this machine to be managed, any of the machines actually, that have Remote Desktop turned on over the internet. So kind of a cool feature. Okay, what we need to do here is just add HTTP, and remember, this is just what you want to name it. Doesn't really matter what you put in there as long as you recognize it. And we're going to make this a TCP port, and we're going to map it back to the Exchange server at 100. Then we're going to put in here SSL, and this should be 443, 443, once again TCP, and it's also going to 100. Make sure you enable both of these, click Save Settings, okay, and then you're all set. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save Settings here, and that's all that you really need to do. It's very simple. Everything else is the same. With this Linksys router in place, Outlook Web Access will work just as it did before, okay, when we had the NAT server in place. Okay, one last thing. Keep saying that, but I'm going to show you one thing that I mentioned before, and I want to make sure that we don't forget about it. Here's a diagram that we had used in a previous setup, and I want you to understand, remember we configured those ports so they go from the NAT server, and the Outlook Web Access ports actually point straight here. They don't go through the SMTP server. Now the reason is because you're sitting on this laptop here and you're forming a remote desktop connection over the internet through this NAT server. Okay, you're not sending email, so we're actually connecting from a remote desktop connection in here to Exchange 1. When you send an email, it's actually being sent from this machine. It's not being sent from here when you form that remote desktop connection, or I'm sorry, when you do the Outlook Web Access. Okay, so when you do Outlook Web Access through the NAT server, it's actually connecting to the Exchange server, and when you send an email, it's just sending it from your actual email box here. So that's then going to be sent from the Exchange server through the SMTP server and then through the NAT server. Okay, when you receive an email message, it's not actually received right here. What happens is you're receiving this email here. It's actually sent to the Exchange server, and when you form that Outlook Web Access connection, you're actually able to view this mailbox just using this HTTP protocol. Okay, you're seeing screenshots essentially. The email is not actually downloaded or brought to your system. Okay, you're just able to see that information that's actually stored here on the Exchange server. So because that's the reason, that's why we don't have Outlook Web Access, those ports that are mapped, we don't have them mapped through SMTP1. They go from here, or I'm sorry, they go from here directly to the Exchange server. Okay, that wraps up video 6. Hope you found this video helpful. I had fun doing it, and we'll see you back here real soon when we start video 7.